The New York Yankees lose out on the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and he signs with the New York Mets with an historic 15-year, $765 million deal. Steve Cohen gets his big prize. We're here to break it down and react to it with Joel Sherman from the New York Post. I'm Ryan Sampson. This is the emergency pod of Pinstripe Post. Joel, I just listened to you on MLB Network. I got a little bit of your reaction there, but for here at the Pinstripe Post, what more can you say about Juan Soto going to the New York Mets?
Yeah, I think that the way to think about this is Juan Soto was like Steve Cohen buying the Mets. When Steve Cohen bought the Mets, there was a bid, David Blitzer and Josh Harris, who owned the 76ers. Josh Harris now owns the Commanders in the NFL. They own a bunch of things. They had a big bid. Alex Rodriguez and J-Lo had a big bid. And Steve Cohen was essentially sitting there and just like, what's the bid? And I'm going to beat it. And if somebody would have topped it, he would have beaten it. And then he would have kept beating it. And I just think this is the new world, that $51 million a year to Steve Cohen might be what he does for upkeep on his yacht. You know, it's not as – so I think that if the Yankees were – 16 at 760. Say they would have said, okay, you know what, forget it. We'll do 51 a year. We'll do 15 at 765. I think that Cohen then would have said, all right, 15 at 775. Because this is how he also buys art. There's no wins above replacement for art. It's what you're willing to pay. And he's like, oh, that Picasso, I'm willing to pay more than anyone else because I want the Picasso. In this case, he wanted this Picasso, the best hitter in baseball, who is Juan Soto. And I just think that unless Soto at some point was going to say, there's nothing more I want to be than a Yankee for the rest of my career, the Mets were going to win. Because if I had told you even a week ago, certainly a month ago, the Yankees are going to bid $760 million on Juan Soto, or $400 million than they gave to Aaron Judge, you would have said, well, A, that's crazy, and B, that means he's a Yankee, regardless of anything else. Well, that turned out not to be true, and I just think that this is the new sheriff in town, and it's life with Steve Cohen in your backyard, and the Yankees, Hal Steinbrenner, etc., and all Yankee fans are just going to have to get used to this world.
It's shocking, Joel, and this is the new reality, right? Like, that's the thing I keep hearing you and your coworkers at MLB Network discuss about. This is that moment of the tide shifting. It's something that we saw coming. It kind of feels like you're waiting for that storm to arrive, and now it's finally arrived and it's taken over. But it's not just a storm; it's the new reality, and it's the new life that we have to live as Yankees fans. Seeing Steve Cohen just say, I'm putting my foot down and I'm putting the Godfather offer is what I heard. It's just
Ryan, think of it this way, is for most of, so like, one of the things Hal Steinbrenner listens to all the time is you're not your father. And that's like an endless game that you can never win, right? Because ultimately, like he really did acquire Giancarlo Stanton with with about 300 million left. He really did give out the largest pitching contract in history at the time to Garrett Cole. He really did give out the largest per annum position contract in history to Aaron Judge. He gave out the 11th highest at the time free agent pitching contract to Carlos Rodon. He okayed the trading of 30 players over the last 3 years, which were mainly prospects, including what he had to do to get Soto for the year. The thing is that you're in this endless loop where the true blue Yankee fan is going to say, okay, but George would have done more. And I just don't think that George competed against the Wilpons. George didn't compete. I wrote a column just now. That's Aaron Judge versus John Birdie in a home run contest. Like, that's not a contest. Like, they beat the Wilpons. The Wilpons didn't have the stomach or the payroll, the wallet for that fight. Steve Cohen does. The Guggenheims, who own the Dodgers, do, right? Have the stomach for this fight. I think we saw a bit of this last year. Again, very early in the process last year, if I would have told you the Yankees were offering Yamamoto $300 million, you would have went, woo! The Yankees are signing Yamamoto. Well, it turned out that the Dodgers and the Mets offered $325, and even there, The only reason the Mets didn't offer more is Yamamoto's representatives told him, stop. He wants to be a Dodger. But the Mets weren't going to stop. And that is the lesson that has to be learned here. Steve Cohen, when it comes to the pieces of art within baseball that he wants to get his hands on, he is not going to stop. And this is a reality that Yankee fans are going to have to deal with. George Steinbrenner would have lost to Steve Cohen also. He would have lost to the Guggenheims on a lot of these things. He was playing in a field where there were not these people.
And I think the other part of this is the Hal factor, right? We heard that Hal and the Yankees were so like in this that they were the contenders, the leaders of from whatever you want to hear from the rumors.
Wait,
the Yankees.
I want to stop that right there.
Go ahead, please.
They were never the leaders. Like I've seen that out there.
Yeah.
Again, I just have to say, if Steve Cohen is lurking, all you're doing is creating the platform on which Steve will ultimately beat. And so I thought this was going to, my first number for this was 14 at 6. I had two numbers, 14 at 658 and 15 at 720. And he obviously beat both things. But again, if I had told, I think the problem would have been if the Yankees began this negotiation at 15 at 720, I think Cohen would have said 15 at 730. And if the Yankees said 15 at 740, he would have said 15 at 750. And at some point, somebody says uncle first, right? And I don't think the Yankees. And the other thing to remember is there is a $75 million signing bonus here. I do not think the Yankees, the way they are structured, again, they're the Yankees. They could go to a bank and get $75 million loan tomorrow, right? Because they own the Yankees. But it's just not the way the Yankees are financially set up to give a player something. Cohen will do what is necessary when he wants the player. So if the player, and by the way, I don't have any criticism. Juan Soto played by the rules, which was he was a great player who played 6 years in the major leagues. He's a free agent. If what he wanted was the last dollar, that's his prerogative. But like, I would ignore a lot of the nonsense, right? Which was the Yankees were leading, or look, there was always this story. If the Yankees were close, the Yankees are going to get them. Well, the Yankees were close. They offered $760 million. What's the difference if I pay a $760 over 16 years or $765 over 15? It's all money the 7 generations from now isn't spending of Soto's. He wanted the ultimate contract. Cohen was willing to do it, and at some point the Yankees stopped because they believe Cohen wouldn't.
Right. And that makes sense. And I think it further proves what we all had thought and going into this whole thing with Soto, even before he was like, and when he became a Yankee and he was traded, it was the whole, can the Yankees convince him to stay here because they're not going to be able to match whatever number that is for Steve Cohen. And no matter, how great of a year he had, how much the fans might have embraced him and how, everything looks so well. And they went to the World Series and they came close, but not really in the World Series. And all that right into, at the end of the day, he went to the highest bidder, and that was Steve Cohen. And there was no favorship or there's no like, oh yeah, you're the Yankees. I enjoy my time there. I'm going to give you a little bit of a discount. He was not giving them a discount no matter what. It was the biggest deal he was going for. And that further proves that that's what Juan Soto wanted. He just wanted the most money. He doesn't care where he was going.
And he earned the right to do it.
He did. Do you give credit
I don't begrudge a player doing it at the highest level when this is what people who are employed do all the time. I left my, I was making $51 an hour. Somebody offered me $55 an hour. I didn't have any allegiance to the $51 an hour place. I want to make $55 an hour. Somebody's offering me $62 an hour. It's whatever it is along the way. This is how people make a decision. I don't know why we should hold ball players to a higher standard than that.
No, I hear you, Joel. I think just because, we become so ingrained with these players, and especially someone as talented as Juan Soto, and having that stacked lineup of him and Judge for the next 15 years or 10 years for when Judge was here would have been a lot of fun. It would have been something for Yankees fans to look forward to. The part that I have is are you shocked or surprised the fact that the Yankees and Hal were willing to go to those numbers? And I know you talked about this is him, trying to live up to his dad's expectations. But the fact that he was able to say, I mean, this is a man who said you don't need a $300 million payroll to win a championship, but
I'm
he's
old
proving
enough to remember when he said I didn't need a $200 million payroll.
exactly.
So, like, clearly they're going to have a $300 million payroll again next year. They were going to have that with or without Soto. And, the question is now, how do they spread around this money to try to be, a still high level contender? It is the memory, which
Oh no, did we lose Joel? We did. All right. We lost Joel here for a second. We're going to try and get him back. I'm going to pop on my guy, Tommy Hogan, another Yankees fan for us, and get his reaction here. Tommy, how you feeling, man? You heard Joel there, and he basically laid it out, man. He's like, Steve Cohen was getting him no matter what.
He was never gonna stop. And so I had a few questions because of that. That was going to be my question. Was there just never going to be a number where the Yankees would do this and Cohen would beat it? The Yankees would do this, Cohen would beat it. So I guess like my questions for Joel when he's able to come back on are, he said if there was a number for Juan Soto to say, I want to be a Yankee, if you reach this, I will be. Does the fact that he turned down $760 million tell us that there was never that number?
That's kind of the sense I was getting, right? Because that's what I was asking him. Like, it seems like no matter what, Soto wanted that largest contract ever. That's all he was looking for.
Well, he was going to get it.
I know he's going to get. I'm saying he's like, I want the biggest. So here's Joel. We got Joel back on here. Yeah. Joel, Tommy's got a question here for you, man.
Go ahead.
So Joel, you said that Cohen was always going to beat the offer unless there was a number for Juan Soto where he wanted to be a Yankee if the Yankees got to this number. Does the fact that he turned down $760 million tell us that there was never that number, or was it $800 million and the Yankees just weren't going to do that?
No, I think he was going to go to whoever gave him the best contract. And
gotcha.
And the Mets were in this world going to give him the highest contract.
So I guess my second question to that, if the Mets were always going to beat whatever the Yankees offer was, why did the Yankees stop? Why didn't they get it to up to 800?
Well, I think you probably have to, we don't know what's going on in the negotiation. Scott Boras is a world-class negotiator. I'm sure he's not telling him, oh, by the way, Steve Cohen should beat you. I'm sure he's probably leading the Yankees on like, oh, Juan loved being a Yankee, like, but you've got to show him the love, and love is the contract. And because, again, the number feels that. So let's start with this. In July 2022, Juan Soto's offered 15 years at $440 million by the Nationals. And I remember him turning that down and people saying, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen, turning down $440 million. Well, all right. Like, he made about another $50 million in the 2 years before free agency. And now he's gotten 760 or 765, whatever the number is here. So clearly it was worthwhile to turn down. But, like, let's start with 440. This offseason began with, will he get 500? Then will he get 600? Then will he double Judge at 720? I mean, we really went a lot further than we imagined. And I think this might be one where we go a lot further than anybody will for a long time, because I think the next time anything might look like this is 4 or 5 years from now when Gunnar Henderson, if he continues on this path, becomes a free agent, because players like Bobby Witt Jr. are signed long-term. Corbin Carroll is signed long-term. One of the things that makes Juan Soto so much more valuable is you hardly ever see anyone get out into free agency at this age with this level of accomplishment. And then you play well, if not him, who? It's not only in this marketplace, but tell me which marketplace over the next few years. You know who all the best players are. They're either not eligible for free agency for a while, or they're tied up in long-term contracts already. Julio Rodriguez, pick your guy who's a young star. They're tied up in contracts. So part of what drove this is, hey, and also, like, look, part of this is I know a lot of Yankee fans now will say, okay, pivot and use the money and go get several players. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. But the one thing you know for sure is, 15 years from now, 10 years from now, Juan Soto will probably not be nearly as good as he is today. But there will be no doubt in 2025 how good he's going to be. And, like, now you've got to start guessing at, well, Is Christian Walker going to be a good player? Can we actually get Cody Bellinger? Should we forget that and just get Fried and Corbin Burns? By the way, like, what's their level of health? How soon will they both need Tommy John surgery? Like, there's all kinds of guesswork. Soto had removed the guesswork. He proved he could play in New York. He reiterated that he's a great postseason player. So that all of this just kept driving value. And then if I was sitting and saying, what is going to drive value the best? Well, how about New York versus New York, right? How about let's throw in two desperate teams like Boston and Toronto. Oh, by the way, let's throw in the Dodgers just to keep everyone honest, by sitting and lurking and saying, what is this? So it was the perfect storm for him, but he created a lot of the perfect storm by being so good.
Right. It speaks to the type of player he is and how historically good he's been in his first 6 years in the MLB.
Yep.
Joel, do you believe he passed up on the better situation for $5 million?
Oh, I don't know. I think he'll be great hitter wherever. Now, I do think Yankee Stadium in particular is built for him because there's so much batting average to the left side and so much power to the right side for him. There.
And defensively.
It also covers up some of his defensive shortcomings by being a small right field. But as the Mets are currently constructed, there could be 30 to 50 games of DH for Soto, right? Like if you want, because they of the way they're set up. So look, ultimately, this contract's a reflection of wanting him to bat 4 or 5 times a game because of how special he is as a hitter. And yeah, look, it changes the dynamic of baseball in New York. The Mets have never taken a player away from the Yankees at this level, and they have done that now at a time where they almost went to the World Series. The Yankees obviously did go to the World Series. And by the way, they're not done this offseason. We're seeing the ambition of this owner, and it changes the dynamic of baseball in New York. And the question will be, is this town big enough for everybody? I assume it is. I've seen years where the two teams drew well over 6 million combined, and both have been really good. So I assume that's what's coming. I figure the Yankees will pivot, and they'll be as long as Judge and Cole are healthy, I assume that they'll be a very good team with a real shot to make the playoffs, win the division next year. But this is an incredible blow to them. Think about how further they went than they wanted to go to try to keep the player, because he's as sure a great offensive player for the next 5 years as exists in the game.
You mentioned a couple times, Joel, that you thought that Juan Soto was a guy that did care about his legacy, and that could actually work in the Yankees' favor. Do you think that ended up working in the Mets' favor, that he can go down as the best Met of all time?
Player, he certainly has a shot to be the best position player in their history. Let's not forget Tom Seaver did pitch for the Mets. But I think but I think all of that is next level. Like, I think he probably wants to play on a team that's really good. I think he could believe that David Stearns and Steve Cohen are going to put a good product on the field. At least are going to try by spending a lot of money to do it. And I think he cares about legacy. But this is the one time in his life. There's a 15-year contract. Now, I know there's an opt-out after 5 where he can make the score. So the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth priority here was to maximize the contract.
Right. It's $300 million over the first 5 years if you include that signing bonus, which is what you alluded to, Joel, for $75 million. So yeah, you alluded to, again, Joel, the what the Yankees pivot to. I'm not going to ask you to lay out the plan, but the concern is a little bit here for us as Yankees fans. I'm getting a repeat now, flashbacks of 2015. McCann, Ellsbury, giving them onerous and ridiculous contracts that tie you up for years because it's, you're spending that money and you end up spending that money on free agent players that aren't good. So how does Cashman and company put a plan together to Hal and say, these are high impact players because there are free agents and trade options here that we can lay out, that we feel that we can improve this baseball team and get back to the World Series?
So something to keep in mind, like, I know the Yankees offered $760 million, but they're not going to probably spend $760 million this offseason. The way to think about it is the Yankees were willing to spend $47.5 million. In this marketplace, that isn't going to go very far. The idea that that's somehow going to buy 5 players, that's not happening, right? So I think they're going to have to get a little creative. Can they get somebody to take on most of, say, Marcus Stroman's contract? I think that they're very open about Nestor Cortez. I wouldn't be surprised if Jose Trevino was traded in this marketplace to just kind of create a little more money along the way for them to do some other stuff. But if you're looking at what the cost of pitching is, consider like what Luis Severino got, right? Like, so just imagine, what is Corbin Burns going to get? What is Max Fried going to get? So the Yankees would have to think about going to 325, 330, whatever. And yet the flip side of that is what? Like, should they just say, okay, play Ben Rice at first, play Jason Dominguez in left, play Caleb Durbin at second, like sprinkle, like refix the bullpen again and roll it out there and try to win 88 games and get in the playoffs and look at it again in July? Because I do think one of the problems they have is they have traded so much from their system over the last 3-4 years that it's not a very strong system now. So they really have to buy it. It's why, look, they're not going to probably do what I think they should do. But, and again, look, it's for another show, but even in the off season, they don't see part of the problem of the team the way that I expressed the problem of the team all season, right? They kept trying to quarantine and say they had a bad game 5 when we watched them play like shit all year, like in certain areas of baseball. And they, like, I think they have to like emphasize baseball players. For example, Christian Walker's a really good baseball player. He's a really good baseball player. He isn't perfect because he's a pull hitter, right-handed pull hitter at Yankee Stadium, but he's a really good baseball player. He's in his mid-30s. He's going to cost a lot of money now because he knows the drag up from Soto is going to do it, but he's a good player. I understand the injury risk on this player, but Carlos Correa is a really good baseball player. If I'm thinking about somebody who can play third base as a supplementary player, I think Cody Bellinger's a good baseball player. And I would think of stuff like that as a way to try to say, how can I just be overall as good as possible depth-wise? Like, I would notice the Dodgers keep getting better. I think Michael Conforto is a good supplementary player. I think Blake Trinan is proven he's a good relief pitcher, and Tommy Edman was brought back there. And it's like, yeah, they did this thing at the top with Blake Snell, but they keep also improving the depth of the team.
Yeah, their complementary pieces are extraordinarily good.
Yeah, and I think the Yankees need to find a way to kind of like deepen up here, but deepen up in those areas which they would disagree with me.
Right, they have that arrogance, the Yankee arrogance.
Or they have a blueprint of what they think is important. And by the way, I think it's important also. You know, if you hit a 3-run homer, your chances of winning are extraordinary. Like, I get it. The most important, valuable thing you could do in the sport is hit a multi-run homer. I get it. I understand the philosophy of it and the value of it. But there's no reason why you can't be good at both things. Like, I would stay away from Pete Alonso. That's me. I think Pete Alonso replicates the Yankee problem as opposed to solves it. And I think Pete does that thing. He hits, as we saw with Devin Williams in the postseason, he does a thing that could change a game like that. But he clogs the bases. He's right-handed. I actually think he's a little better defender than the metrics and his reputation because he's very good.
He's slow and he's unathletic, though.
Right. And I would think that like the best 6 years he's ever going to have, he's just had with the Mets, and you're going to be dealing with decline over the next few years. I know it will be unpopular with Yankee fans because they will like shiny objects. But I would think about just bringing in now. You've lost the chance at the great player. There's nothing that looks like Soto in this marketplace. So I would think about, like, can I bring in as many really good players as possible? And remember that you're starting with Judge and Cole, who, if healthy, and those are big question marks, they are really great players. I actually think Luis Gil has a chance to be a really good starting pitcher in the major leagues. That Clark Schmidt could be good. That Luke Weaver has a chance, if that's who he is, to be special. And like, I would think like that a little bit is maybe do I take a chance on Tanner Scott try to build up my bullpen with the big lefty guy and power guy. I just think tying up long-term contracts now as a kind of pivot. Remember, when the Yankees didn't get Ohtani, they pivoted to Stanton. And I know that fans feel great about Stanton right now because of what he just did in the postseason. But in general, that has not been a great deal for the Yankees. Like, you forget all the times where you're like, oh, God, he's hurt again, or he's like in one of those like 1 for 30 with 15 strikeout periods. And they would have been
ultimately
better.
he clogs up that DH spot that Judge that needs days off on.
Clogs the payroll, clogs the DH spot, messes up the rest. And by the way, he's really good.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't work perfect. And I think the worst thing they could do is be like jilted at the altar and then react by overpaying Corbin Burns or going too far for Max Fried or overpaying Santander. Like I think the key now would be, hey, you still have a lot of good players. I think that the Rays are going to take multiple steps backwards. I think the Blue Jays are a mess. I'll believe that I get it. Everyone's talking up the Red Sox prospects. Let's see it. Let's see the Red Sox win for somebody this offseason also. Like, the AL East might not be the beast it's been. And I think the Yankees could think of it as try to get as many good players as possible without screwing up your near future. And look, they have to do a little better with their farm system and hope that there's a year of growth here that allows them to bring some people through. Look, the season is different, right? Like, here's a way the season's different. As you know, I'm not a huge Jazz Chisholm guy, but Jazz Chisholm could be a 30-30 player, right? He has that skill set. Jason Dominguez might be able to be a 20-20 player even in the first year. Is there another 10% of growth for Volpe and Wells? Like, that's a lot of potential improvement in that group of players right there. Do you get it? Usually that doesn't work out. And by the way, the Yankees haven't been great at development and certainly sustained development. There's been a lot of like Greg Bird up and down. There's been a lot of Gary Sanchez up and down, Miguel Andujar up and down. And so I would need to see that, but I think they need that. I think they need Spencer Jones to take a step forward and Roderick Arias to take a step forward. And for this all to look a little better internally, because otherwise they're going to screw up their near future, right? Like, Cole and Judge are starting to gray a little bit here. And they have to think about what tomorrow looks like. And I would not overreact. Steve Cohn is going to be part of their life for a long time. And by the way, Juan Soto is going to be part of their life across the RFK bridge for a long time. And that
it's going to hurt.
Making a bunch of rash decisions will not change those facts, but could make your life worse in the Jacoby Ellsbury, Brian McCann, Giancarlo Stanton kind of way. When the Yankees, and again, I know how unpopular it is with their fan base that always wants more, big names, but there is no second place to Juan Soto. So now the pivot to me is add as many good players to deepen your group as possible. And, you know, like, this is the infrastructure. Hope your infrastructure knows what it's doing and that your minor league system with 12 months of growth is ready to produce even more.
No, I think it's well said. Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
Joel, how do you think Hal Steinbrenner and Brian Cashman feel right now? Like, what's going through their heads right now?
You know, I'm sure Hal is, you know, stealing his spine for more "you're not your dad." And
I really don't think the Yankee fans are feeling that way about Hal Steinbrenner.
Right.
I think they understand that he went above and beyond what they expected. I really don't think hear a lot of.
The Yankees were very happy to leak what the offer was because they wanted you to feel that way.
Okay.
Look at how far our owner was willing to go.
Did that extra year hurt them?
What?
Did adding the extra year hurt them? Like, if it was 15,760, does that change anything?
I just go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Whatever they did, Steve Cohn was going to say more.
Okay.
And clearly what we've seen with what Juan Soto did. Because again, if I would have told you at any point in this process up to say 72 hours ago, the Yankees are going to offer 16 years through his age 41 season for $760 million, you'd be like, wow, that's outrageous, but he is going to be a Yankee.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's not a Yankee because he decided to go where the greater contract was. And I just believe because it was greater than 760 to 765, no matter how the Yankees shaped that. And I would not ignore that signing bonus. Don't hold me to this, but I believe that Juan Soto's home base is Florida. I believe how a signing bonus works is you get your signing bonus where you live now. It's a non-tax state, non-state tax state. And so that $75 million increases the real value of the contract for Soto because he's not doing it. If the Yankees aren't built to be able to give him a $75 million signing bonus, they offered him a lot more than $765 million, considering what taxes would be in New York compared to what, you know, the getting $75 million in a non-tax state right off the bat.
So how are they?
I was hoping to play CPA, by the way.
So what's going through their, like, do they feel like, okay, like, are they upset right now? Or are they?
The Yankees have gone into a bunker. Their people are very erratic getting back to me and others for the post right now. As I'm sure they're trying to, like, okay, let's take a deep breath. What's plan B? How are we going? I'm sure they've thought a lot about plan B. I would think there are a lot of people in their room who are like, we dodged a bullet. I'm glad we didn't do this.
That's what I'm thinking, man. Am I crazy, Joel? I know I'm a Yankees fan. I know I'm coping. Like, people will say I'm coping, Ryan. You're coping as a Yankees fan. You lost out to the Mets for Juan Soto. But this is a guy who sucked in right field. Let's be real. And he's a generational bat. He's a generational at bat. But I am taking him out of my lineup, and it's going to hurt us tremendously in the lineup. But I also can't forget, Aaron Judge is the reigning MVP. Aaron Judge is still going to hit 50-plus home runs, and he's going back to right field where he belongs. And at the end of the day, you have an owner that's willing to spend a lot of money. Go find some players to surround around Aaron Judge and make this team better, like you said.
Yeah, the only problem is, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Ryan. I'm just suggesting that, you know, like, you would have to worry about Juan Soto in like 2033, right? But not 2025. He's as sure thing as you're going to spend money on in that way. And for the short term. Whereas now the Yankees, and again, the Yankees were willing to spend $47.5 million in just 2025 on him. That money doesn't go that far in this marketplace. So they're either going to have to spend a lot more, or part of the, no matter what they do, part of the answer here is a full season of Chisholm. They went to a World Series with Alex Verdugo as their left fielder over 162 games. Does Jason Dominguez greatly outperform that? Is Austin Wells over a full season like a 25 homer catcher? Is there still a 720 OPS Volpe with 35 stolen bases and 50 extra base hits? Like, these are not inconceivable things, and they would get a lot better. And by the way, on the cheap at all of those, which would allow some other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also would make them bolder come July to try to fix some things. This is a tough marketplace to just try to fix things. Look at the prices. I mean, Michael Conforto didn't have that great a year. I think Michael Conforto's a good player, but he just got $18 million.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, and Blake Trinan just got 2 years at 22, and Luis Severino got $67 million, and Michael Wacha got $51 million. And like, by the way, that $67 million, like, that's kind of what was offered to, like, some version of that, I think, to Sean Manaea. I think some version of that to Nathan Eovaldi. They turned it down. So what are they going to get in this marketplace? So I am, it's not, the one thing about Soto is if you could close your eyes and not worry about 2033, it was going to be really good next year. And you know Judge and Soto cover a lot of blemishes if they're able to bat 1,200 to 1,400 times, which they did. And look, you know, part of the problem for the Yankees is Judge batted over 700 times last year. Do you think he'll bat over 700 times again next year? Right? That's maybe, like, but that's a tough one to believe. They had 6 starters make all but 9 of their starts last year. Like, even though Cole missed time, he missed it at the perfect time while Hill was good and Clark Schmidt was kind of healthy until they kept passing the baton to each other, and 6 guys essentially made all the starts. Will they be that fortunate again? So, like, in some ways, they were blessed. And by the way, will they play 2 AL Central teams in the playoffs who will just not be able to take advantage of all their mistakes and roll over? So, I think that the one thing I would just say about Soto, Ryan, is he's Soto in 2025 and Soto in 2026 and 27 and 28. Like, it's going to be a while until you get to that point where you look at the contract. Now, the other way to look at it is if he was great now through age, say, 33 and then fell off the cliff, he would essentially have Aaron Judge's contract left. About $360 million left of like dead money. Like we're gonna see something unless he's able to stay really, really good for a long time. Now, maybe again, that's a decimal point movement for Steve Cohen. All right, I got to chew down on $360 million over 8 years. All right, God bless. Everybody move along. I'm fine with it. It's I'll bury it someplace in the books. But I mean, there will be a future time where the contract becomes problematic, but it wasn't going to be next year.
Right.
And so the Yankees now have a team that, like, last offseason had money to spend and spent it on Alex Verdugo and Marcus Stroman and got Trent Grisham included in the trade. Like, you got to trust that group of guys to now get multiple moves right, whereas Juan Soto just starts as a 900 OPS guy who nobody wants to pitch to. It's probably over the next 10 years it's fine. But in 2025, that's a hard one to replace.
Listen, I know we got to let you go, Joel. We appreciate you giving us some time. It's a fascinating conversation. We're going to do future episodes here as we see where the hell the Yankees go with their plans now to pivot here, now that Juan Soto is going to be with the New York Mets. Definitely still stings tonight, and we appreciate you giving us your reaction breakdown to it all, man.
Yeah, I'm not doing a commercial, but I've been taking this all day. I am so sick. I got on the plane sick, and it's getting worse.
Oh, no.
I got to go run downstairs and go talk to more people. But
Joel, thank you. You made me feel better tonight, and I hope at least that you made some more Yankee fans that are watching feel better too, because it was tough. It's tough, like you said. It's going to hurt in 2025, but it's thinking beyond that it might not hurt as much as we initially thought.
I think they're in a way the Yankees are never going to be the underdog. And I know I'm listening to a lot of moaning in the lobby down here. I mean, this is the convention of the baseball business. Everybody's here. Like, all the trainers are here. All the team doctors are here. All the PR people. Like, everyone has meetings here. And, the first reaction is, like, this is bad for baseball. And I say, you know what? I was around when the Yankees three-peated and won 4 championships in 5 years and went to, 5 or 6 World Series in a very short time. And there is something to be said when there's a Goliath where, like, half the fans love them and half the fans freaking hate them. What you never want is indifference. When the Mets go to, like, Colorado now, which would be like, fans are going to line up because they're going to want to hate the Mets. And I know that it's hard for maybe the average fan to see that. I actually think there's an advantage for the sport being a Goliath. On the other hand, the Yankees are never going to be underdogs, but there's a little thing now where, and it's why I've harped on it, and I know we'll do it in future episodes, and I really do have to run here.
Yep.
But the ability of those young players to play well for a full season and help the Yankees will be something that re-engages the fans, because we know there's few things fans love more than the success story from within, where Jason Dominguez doesn't just turn out to be a good nickname, the Martian. He turns out to be a good baseball player. And that Austin Wells really does have a full season in him. And there's more in Volpe. And Spencer Jones starts to make a positive move towards the majors. Now, is all that going to happen? I doubt it. Like, again, it's not the history of the sport in general, and certainly not the Yankees of the last 25 years. But that begins to solve a lot of their problems. If that is true, And I think it also will make the fans feel better, because that also promises a better near future if those guys are good players, and allows them financially to do some stuff.
We're listening. We can't wait to talk to you more about it, man, this offseason. We appreciate you as always, man.